Have you ever been in a situation where you did something or you said something that was so contrary to your old religious beliefs that you immediately felt a huge pang of guilt? And you know that you don't believe that anymore, that what you did was actually evil. But for some reason, it still hits you. It's still tough. Well, the good news is, it's not God just trying to remind you that you're wrong. It is a part of your religious programming and it can go away. And that is what we are talking about today. I'm Mr. Atheist. Let's do this. Happy Friday and welcome back to Dear Mr. Atheist. And yeah, I want to talk about this thing that has definitely happened to me in the past. But I can tell you, not so much recently. I can tell you it has been a number of years. I would probably say around 5 since I really felt that religious guilt, that inner feeling of, oh no, you've just sinned against your creator. But it is something that I used to feel. Remember that I'm an ex-Mormon and it's hard for you to forget because I won't stop bringing it up. But there's actually a phrase for this amongst ex-Mormons. It's called the TBM whisper, or the true believing Mormon or member, depending on who you're talking to, whisper. And it comes in many forms. I know for a lot of people, that guilt comes as they start to explore their sexuality more, or as they drink for the first time, because in Mormonism, both of them are treated like they are just the worst poisons you can put in your body, and that people who do enjoy partaking in that may be some level of irredeemable. Unless, of course, they start giving the church their money. For me, when I first became an atheist, I had no problem with debating with believers whether or not God existed, and yet when Mormonism itself came up, there were times that I would want to defend certain concepts and certain ideas. I would feel this draw to be like, hey, they're really not that big of outliers. One of the strange things that's dropped in recent years is the desire to defend them against the concept that they are a cult, that they are more culty than mainstream religions. But then there would also be other little things, like in discussions. If I would say something a little bit crass or a little bit insulting to Jesus or God, feeling like that individual heard it, even though I certainly didn't actually believe in his existence. Either of them. And I can assure you, it's probably in the comments right now, there are people who, when hearing that, would try and convince you that that's actually God trying to reach out to you. But it's not. What it actually is years of religious programming, making you have emotional and controlled reactions to things that aren't actually intrinsically bad, that aren't immoral, but things that have been called sins and therefore are meant to be immoral by these religions and by these churches that want to control your very behavior. The problem is the threats of like hell and punishment, those ones hold on longer than the other ones that are easy to dismiss because these things do exist on a spectrum. Most religious people in America today now accept the concept of gay marriage. And I think most of them could tell you that they can remember 10, 15, and 20 years ago feeling an absolute disgust by the very idea at one point. But now that feeling has gone away as reason has won out. Again, for many of them, there's still lots and lots of very homophobic religions. In fact, we are more talking about on the level of the individual than what Christianity represents itself as largely in the United States. And those kinds of feelings are easier to go away for people who don't have a personal stake in it. It is easier for a straight person who has believed being gay was shameful most of their life to change their mind on that and not feel like God might pay them back than it would be for a gay person who has spent a significant amount of time in the church hating their quote-unquote sin to not feel like they are sinning when they are exploring that part of themselves. And so I want to share with you today an exercise that I did that was extremely helpful for me to get over religious guilt, to feel better about exploring myself, to feel okay saying swear words, which admittedly I did still when I was a believer, but to not feel like everyone who drinks or tries certain drugs or whatever, that those people are immediately scummy, and how I got over feeling like I had to defend what was a childhood affection for an organization that was trying to program me to do their will and give up my identity for a set of rules laid down by a God who doesn't even have the decency to show himself and explain why he thinks those rules are good. Because remember, and you'll find this amongst most religious people, God doesn't owe you any explanations. So to begin, I can tell you one of the important things to start with is getting a clear idea of where you are at. It's okay if where you are at itself isn't clear, but you do need to have something to sort of latch onto. So if you are an atheist, you don't believe in God, you need to know that going in. And I know this sounds a bit obvious, but trust me, it'll make sense in a moment. If you are a deist, if you don't believe in any kind of interventionary God, but that somehow some entity, some power out there got everything started, you need to know that too, and you need to know what that word means to you. Even if you are still a theist, but say you're no longer a Christian or no longer a Muslim or whatever it is you aren't anymore, you want to put words to it and you want to know what those words mean to you, because it is an important part of the exercise to come. And you don't have to come up with an individual word. It can be things like, I'm not convinced by this because this doesn't add up this way. Then it also helps to acknowledge what you are feeling. Is it guilt or is it fear? Do you feel bad because you've done something that in the past you understood that to be wrong? Or are you afraid you are going to be punished for this? Are you feeling a fear of hell for doing it? So let's put ourselves in a situation that everyone finds themselves in. You've just made love to a Satanist. No, I'm kidding. Not everyone finds themselves in that situation, but just as an example situation. And you feel terribly guilty. You feel really bad about it, but you know you shouldn't feel bad about it because you no longer believe you've actually sinned. So let me present this as though I am that person and sort of illustrate to you the way this exercise works. And by the way, there might be a term for what this exercise is called. I don't know. This wasn't given to me by a therapist. This is actually just something that I worked out for myself and figured it out. So if there is a term for this exercise, feel free to put it in the comments below and let me know, because I may do a follow-up if there's even more useful tools attached to that I didn't know about. So anyway, here I am. I've just made love to a Satanist. I feel bad for a ton of reasons, and the main one being that I've just slept with somebody. And my belief system in the past is that you can't do that outside of marriage. We're just going to focus on the sex part. We're not going to focus on the Satanism part. The exercise works like this. It's having a conversation with yourself out loud if needs be, though you might want to be isolated as people will want an explanation for this. And start off with that first thing, identifying what you are feeling. So you say to yourself, I feel guilty right now because I've just had sex with somebody outside of marriage. Then you want to take that exact statement and extend it out. And you want to explain the pieces of it. So you say, I feel guilty because I've just had sex outside of marriage. And the reason why I feel guilty is because I grew up learning in the Mormon church that you cannot have sex outside of marriage, that is a very serious sin. And then you take that phrase. Now, as these phrases get longer and longer, you really just need to attach to the parts that are significant. You're not necessarily going to remember the whole thing, but you keep going and you literally keep going until it becomes trivial. And you say, I feel guilty for having sex outside of marriage because I learned in the Mormon church that sex outside of marriage is a very grievous sin. But I learned this in the Mormon church, which I now know is not true. And then you take that whole part. Guilty, sex outside of marriage, from the Mormon church, grievous sin, but the Mormon church isn't true. The reasons why I know the Mormon church isn't true are as follows. And you can pick off a few things out of the CES letter or things that were significant on your way outside of the religion. Basically, what you are doing is you are trying to take this feeling of guilt or this feeling of fear, and you are trying to figure out whether or not your brain really believes you should be feeling that. And so you take yourself on that journey and you justify why you shouldn't feel that way. You shouldn't feel bad about it. With the fear of hell thing, I used to usually glob onto the actual hell part. So it would be something like I just slept with a Satanist, which may condemn me to hell if I don't know, if I fall for Satanism or whatever, that I could be on a pathway to hell. Mormons have a different kind of hell, and it's really not anything they threaten anyone with anymore. So I can tell you that my feelings in this regard, it wasn't often I felt that way, but it would literally be, however, I'm fearing that I'm going to go to hell for this. And as I extend that out, hell is this. And I'd describe what hell was by my understanding. The beliefs about hell come from this. I know that this doesn't actually exist because of this. Here is my list of reasons why hell doesn't exist. And you take that feeling all the way to its conclusion. And the first couple times it might not eliminate it, but I will tell you, as you repeat this exercise and you have these feelings that you know you shouldn't have, and you extend them out and you really explore into them, the length to which you are going to have to go to get to the point where you're realizing it's trivial, the number of extensions you're going to need to put onto this, they go way, way down. So by the last few times I was using this exercise, I was literally just saying things like, I feel bad because this was back when I could drink. I've got medical reasons I can't now, but I feel bad because I just drank alcohol and I had quite a bit and I got myself to an altered state, which makes me feel guilty. And then I'd extend that out with, I feel guilty because I was raised in the Mormon church and by a family who treats alcohol like it is the blood of Satan himself. And by the end, I often didn't have to go past there. As soon as I said things like, I feel guilty because I drank alcohol, which is not okay in the Mormon church, and my brain, as soon as it attached Mormon church, I already had the rest of the connections made, just went, well, it literally made that sound. That sound effect is what you're looking for. No, I'm kidding. That sound effect isn't really going to happen. There may be better ways than this. And I would ask people in the comments, if you have ways that helped you get over guilt, if you had ways that helped you get over fear of hell, please share those as people are reading through. If you read ones that you think would be useful, hit the like button on those comments so they will raise up in the comments. But I can tell you, this was extremely useful to me. A lot of people find themselves leaving religion because they can't reason it anymore. They can't do the apologetics anymore because it doesn't make sense, because these religions aren't true, and that can pretty well be demonstrated. But all of that programming you have, all of that commitment, all of that life you had before then, it doesn't just go away. It doesn't just go away immediately. It does take time, and some people don't end up needing the exercises I'm talking about. For some people, it just, with time, it just goes away. But this was a way that helped me. It definitely helped it go away faster, and I've described it to other people and seen it help other people. Again, I'm not saying I invented this. I can tell you it wasn't something that was given to me by somebody else. It was kind of something I figured out on my own, but it does seem like the kind of thing that probably already exists as an exercise. So if people know what this is called, feel free to let me know that in the comments as well. I'd also advise that if you are one of those people that are holding on to a belief because you can't get over the guilt, because you can't get over the fear, and you're doing it to kind of hedge your bets, do consume as much content as possible. Go and figure out just how reasonable your beliefs are, and use an exercise like this or any of the others that might be useful. But again, this is the one I'm presenting today. Use an exercise like this to see if you can let go. Because the whole reason that hell threat is there, the whole reason they want you to feel guilty, they want you to fear hell, is for keeping you in despite your better judgments. The truth is the truth and needs no threats, and it needs no bribery. And yet you have this thing they call the truth, filled with threats, filled with bribery, and you can do better than the church. And I'd like to take this opportunity to bear my testimony. No, I'm just kidding. I realized the rhythm of what I was doing kind of started to sound like that. But as you are going down this path, trying to find out what is most logical, what is most reasonable, and you're having a hard time letting go of these feelings, not the fact, but the feelings that were programmed into you, take those to that same base of reason and logic and working things out and trying to get to a place of really trying to figure out whether or not the way you feel about this is justified. And that's it for today. That's Mr. Atheist. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. We are going to have live shows, obviously, this weekend. Still working out what the Saturday show is going to be. Sunday, I think Kyle and I are going to go on after Game of Thrones, and so it will be a very spoiler-filled episode. So you'll want to watch Game of Thrones too, if that's something that interests you, because we're going to at least talk about it this week, because we're both huge Game of Thrones nerds. Other than that, please hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button if for no other reason than to spite those individuals who literally come before the episode airs and click dislike. I think I'm up to about 4 or 5 of them. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, where I'm actually going to start putting, I'm getting back into my photography stuff for fun. So I'm going to be making some silly images and some fun composites and stuff. So if you want to see those, follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and then follow me on Reddit r/DearMrAtheist, where you can suggest new topics. This is one that has been requested many, many times. As always, I need to say a huge thank you to my patrons who literally keep this channel alive, and a special thank you to my orbital teapots, Mia, Commander Bork, Maya, Caleb, Ariel, Ashley, and Sassy Cat. Never get tired of saying it. Plus, a very special thank you to today's patron of the day, Caitlin Peters. With love, I've been Jimmy Snow. Mr. Atheist is not my father.